Hey everybody, I hope you can see me. Can you see me? I think you can see me. Good morning, good afternoon. Hi, welcome everyone. This is Jeff Besson with Intuiface. I will not be today's speaker. I'm just going to kick things off for you. There's our speaker, Seb Meunier. Hello, Seb. Good morning, Seb.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon.
So today's discussion is about our latest reference design. We're calling it mobile-driven data entry. I don't want to steal too much thunder from Seb. Let me just briefly say that this was inspired by really a variety of projects across customers which came down to this: was there a way to enable an audience to submit information to a running experience without having physical connection to the screen, without literally touching the screen? That could be they're standing in front of the screen, but they're not going to touch it. It could mean a web conference where you're in a completely different city, different country, and entering that data. And so there's a variety of use cases, there's a variety of ways of implementing this kind of interface. And Seb and team have put together an excellent reference design illustrating how to do this. And so with that, I'm going to monitor the questions panel as always. If you have questions, please use the questions panel in the GoToWebinar toolbar. Between myself and Seb, we will monitor that and answer those questions. And also we'll stick around at the end for the usual live Q&A. With that, Seb, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, let's get started. So you should all be able to see my screen and the Intuiface website. Again, for all who just joined, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Seb from Intuiface, and we are going to talk today about mobile-driven data entry. So the new example, the new sample that we just released, actually you will find it among our reference designs. So for those who don't know about them, just a quick recap. If you go on our website in the Learn menu, you will find reference designs, in which we started to add earlier in 2020 all of these previous examples about the new ways of interacting, like the multimode experience, about these like super advanced samples, which you can almost reuse as they are. Just drop your content in it, follow the Help Center article, and make it your own experiences. Like the entrance flow management to help with all this COVID thing, manage and monitor how many persons are entering inside a store. This new one, mobile-driven data entry, is here at the top. You can click on the See More to get more information about this one. There will be the video here, which will be the recording of this webinar. You have access to the Help Center article and to the marketplace. As usual, the sample is posted in the marketplace. I'm not going to go through all the things here, but at the end, you do have the workflow diagram, and this is going to be helpful. So that's the sample that I'm going to show you today. And what I will do is I will drive you through this sample and show you how to reuse this, because we are using both an interface experience and some things, let's call them things, that will run on the mobile phone, on the smartphones, which you can see here at the bottom. I will show you how to configure this sample on your machine to use it yourself and to make demos with that, and then to maybe pick one of the three scenes you will see in this sample and integrate them into your own experiences. Again, the diagram is here for reference, and when you go into the Help Center article, you have the intro, and then you have the three different samples detailed with some details about how they work and how to reuse them in your own experiences. So switching to Composer. In Composer, in the Experience panel, you can go into the Marketplace tab, and you will find it here, Mobile-Driven Data Entry. Just hit Download, and you will get it into your Composer. You will see this sample is made of 4 scenes, the home, and then 3 different examples. As Jeff mentioned, all the things we're going to show here today could work in many scenarios, multiple scenarios. And I'm actually going to go into play mode and go through this sample as if I were a new Intuiface user just wanting to test it. And for that, I will need your help, because the purpose of this is to get inputs from mobile phones, from smartphones. So before I hit play, grab your smartphone, open the photo app, or if you have a specific barcode scanner kind of app, have it ready, and I will ask you to help me in a few minutes. Let's get into play mode. So we do have these 3 samples, and I'm going to start with the first one, the multiple choice poll. If you attended our previous user conference, you've seen me using this before. I'm actually going to go into the scene here, and in this example, the first thing that will happen when you do this in your own machine is, okay, you do need a WebTriggers credential key. So in this sample, actually, let me close this for a second. Don't scan the code yet. This one is not the right one because I don't have my credential key yet. We are going to use this to get your opinion, the opinion of an audience, through a web meeting right now about whatever question you want. In the user conference, I ask you to give a rate to the session between 1 and 5. And here I'm asking you what would be your favorite planet, right? For this to work, you need to make sure that everybody is going to scan the code, will actually send a message, a web trigger, to my machine, to my composer running the experience at this moment, and on my account, basically. So when you enter this scene, just click here. This will bring you to your My Intuiface account / credential keys. You can always access this page from your dashboard, account, My Credential Keys. Right now on this demos account, I have no credential key. I actually deleted all of them. So I'm going to create a new one, create new credential key. Let's call it webinar demo key. And the only thing you need to do here and to check is to give it a scope. We want this key to be used with web triggers. And actually the only one which really matters is this one, Intuiface Web Trigger API. Just check web triggers, you're good to go. Let's go and create this. All right, that's my new credential key. By the way, after the webinar, I will delete it. So don't try to send me any more messages. I'm gonna copy this to the clipboard. All right, and then go back into Composer. In my text input here, Control V to paste the credential key and then submit. You may have seen quickly the QR code refreshed. This is when I need you. So now all of you, please, I will ask you to take the code, scan it, and obviously that's my usual demo effect because I did a lot of tests with multiple accounts this morning. And that's why this was not the right credential key that I used. That's the lovely demo effects of playing with 3 accounts on the same machine at the same time. So bear with me 1 second. I will just go back into play mode. All right. Let's see this code now. Yeah, that looks better, right? You can see the results here. So 3, so at least 2 persons helped me. Thank you. 7, good. Keep going. All right, so here behind the scene, I do have a counter which for each message we receive is going to count all these answers. And because I don't want to bias the answers, I'm not showing the results yet. All right. Now let's say we reach, all right, at 20 results, I will actually show the answers. So give me 2 more results. We can do that. Thank you. All right. So showing the results, you can see here, and it keeps going. Again, behind the scene, I'm using an Excel file with 1 row, 4 cells, and I have 4 linear gauges to actually show the results. Obviously, depending on
9 people are giggling right now.
So we do have these linear gauges. Obviously, you can adjust the minimum and maximum value depending on the kind of audience you're targeting. If you know you're going to be in a meeting with 10 people, you might put 10 as the maximum. In this sample, maybe we are a bit optimistic and you want this to push in the middle of Times Square, right, on a big public screen in the street, and ask people to, hey, give your opinion. And then once in a while, every day, every week, you might want to reset the count. This is just one example of usage of you ask a question, you provide multiple options. And actually, for those who maybe didn't do that, this is what the people are seeing on the web page. Right? This is what is going to be displayed on the mobile phone, where you can decide to provide the available answers to this question. Before you ask, this is not built in Intuiface. What you see on the mobile phone is a regular web page, HTML, JavaScript, and a bit of CSS. All the source code for these pages is provided in the Help Center article, right? So if we go into our Help Center article, multiple choice poll, we have the sample, we have the mobile page, and here you have the three pages, the three files, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to build this UI for the mobile phone. I'm gonna say this at least twice. So this is the first time here, and we did put a note here as a reminder, and it's written in the Help Center. The way we build this sample is not the most secured one. This is the easiest one that we could figure out for you to be able to reuse it on your side, to test it easily, and to make this sample work on your machine. This means that in the QR code that you scanned, it actually includes my credential key. And obviously that's a security potential issue. The good way of doing things would be to create a web page dedicated to your account, dedicated to your experience that has the API key, and there's no transfer of API key between the kiosk and the page. If you have multiple screens, which in this case, in the QR code, you may have seen, if you look into the URL behind it, there is an API key and a device ID, making sure that when I scan this code, I'm actually sending a message to my NUC, my Intel NUC computer, which I'm running right now, and not my laptop. This device ID, no problem, right? You can keep it in the QR code. That will help you to identify to which device you want to send the info. The API key should be hidden on the web page, maybe, or even better, on the server side. That's web development, right? And I'm pretty sure all of you in your teams, you do have web developers, and they will find the right way of doing this. But I want to make sure that this is clear. We made this sample as easy as possible to reuse for a demo purpose. Don't use this in production mode. People may retrieve your credential key, and as someone tried actually during the user conference, try to hack and send some weird messages to your machine. That being said, I hope you get the idea on what are the different scenarios and use cases and locations where you could do that. Could be in one day, hopefully, in a physical meeting room when you have one presenter on the wall and you're doing a big brainstorm with an audience, and you have 10 persons, and instead of asking, raise your hand if you like this or not, grab your phone, scan the big screen, give me the answer. Works in this kind of web conferences, right? And another scenario which we have in mind would be for public signage. So putting this in the street, asking the opinion, trying to engage with an audience in an out-of-door kind of advertising scenario. That's another way to engage without having anyone actually touching a screen. All right, that's for the multiple choice poll. Remember, if you do have any question about this scenario, the question box is open. Jeff is looking at the questions right now. And when you open the sample, you can always click this Learn More button. It will actually send you directly to the article and to the right section in the multiple choice poll. All right, I'm gonna go back to the home and then go to the next example. Free form text entry. So when entering this scene, you see there's no pop-up asking me for a credential key. We are also using the web triggers mechanism. So if I open the settings here, you see that my credential key is already there. We used an experience layer in this sample, so I don't have to input it twice. So if we don't have a demo effect, you should be able to scan the code. Don't wait for me to do that. And in there, you should be able to type in who you are. Yes, Bob, I am. Thank you. My test question. That's me. So in here, and I'll let people just try experiment this, scan the code. It's a different code than the previous one. So you should get to a different UI, and I'm going to actually show you this one to you. Here, this is the kind of UI you will see. In this case, we don't have 4 buttons and we don't send one single answer. We actually send 2 pieces of information. Who's asking? And then what's the question you entered? That's a good question, Casper. Thank you, Janelle. Good to see you here. So the mechanism is almost the same. And by the way, after going through the play mode in all these scenes, I will show you briefly the different interface assets we have behind the scene and the different triggers and actions, right? In here, again, we are using an Excel file to log these questions. Hey, Frank, 8 a.m. in the morning here. Is or true? I don't know, but your question is here, that's for sure. You could have here some close button, right, to just delete the question or mark it as answered. Again, same scenario. If you're in a webinar like this and you want to make it a bit more funny than just using the regular UI, you can definitely use that. You can do some analytics. And actually, I'm doing analytics here. So I will know exactly who asked what question, and this will be logged in the Intuiface analytics. In the previous scene, I obviously also have know who answered which question. So that's the exact same mechanism. We do have this web page here, which is built in HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. The main difference in the web trigger, we are sending a message with 2 parameters instead of 1. In the poll example, we're sending 1 parameter, Jupiter, Uranus, the name of the planet, the answer. In here, we are sending 2 parameters and using them to fill in the Excel file we have here. I can scroll through the questions. That's a very good question. The last one is very important, especially at 8 a.m. This scenario can be used, for example, in a museum. If you want a guest book, it doesn't have to be a question, right? It's a free form entry. The question is just one example. If you want some people to leave a comment to your museum after they visit without having to touch a screen, you can use such a scenario, such a mechanism. Ask them, hey, what did you think? Please leave us a comment. Please give us a review of your experience you had in the museum or any public place that would have been visited, where you want people to leave their impression here and to actually see, yes, it's here. So a question we usually get on that is, how about moderation? It's a good one. And obviously here, the info goes directly from your phone to my experience. There is no middle process involved. But again, it's just a question of API services and level of control you want to have here. If I'm doing this in a webinar with Intuiface users, I would expect pretty good questions here. So I'm not worried about that. If I'm doing this in a meeting, in a brainstorming meeting over Zoom, again, I don't need to filter that. So let's keep it easy if it can be easy and simple. If you're going to a public area where this is going to be published publicly, maybe you want to introduce something in between. You want some moderation step. Maybe you would, instead of using Excel, you would use an online CMS like Airtable and have a flag. And then when you receive a new question here, you send an email or you send a notification to a moderator who would flag the answer yes, no, and based on filters, you would decide to display it in the experience or not. That's about it for this freeform text entry.
Hey Seb, it's a common question. Janelle asked it as well, which is about limiting people to 1 entry. I know you're going to get to that at some point, but maybe you want to talk about that now.
Yeah, it's actually a good reminder. So the question is, how do I prevent people from doing this? I'm Seb, my question. And here in this web page, which again, we try to keep pretty simple, we say send, and I have my debugger open here. So I will hit post. All right, and then you get here. And if you refresh, you can ask it again. All right. One easy way to prevent that is as far as I know, right? I'm still not a web developer, so bear with me on that, is on the web page, add a cookie. And when you hit the send button, store a cookie in the web browser saying, hey, this thing has already been used. The question has been answered. When you reload the page, check if you have the cookie. If yes, display a third kind of layout. Hey, sorry, you did that already. You can't do it again. That's one easy way. I'm guessing there are lots of different ways to do that on the website. That's HTML development. And I'll be honest with you, that's not my domain of expertise. I can tell you if I have 2 questions coming from Seb on the experience side, I could filter them and only keep the first one, right? But we may have multiple Sebs somewhere in the world. So for this web page not to be able to be reused twice on the same device, on the same mobile phone or tablet, cookies is like a first good step to give it a try to. And Janelle, I hope that answers your question. Jeff, do we have any other thing about this sample, or did you want to add something about maybe the usages, the examples that maybe I forgot to talk about? Jeff, you might be on mute. But I do see additional questions. Can you configure a blacklist of words? Probably, yes. And actually, before we go further into the third example, let me take a pause here and go into the details of these two first samples, which and these two rely on the same mechanism, right? The web triggers API. The third one will be a bit different. So let's have a look into this multiple choice poll. What happens here on the left-hand side among the interfaces set? So we don't need that yet. We have our web triggers API here. We have our live poll and the questions, and we do have some settings. In the web triggers, we do have these 4 conditional triggers, right? So if I look here, I am expecting a message, and there should be a filter here, but if the message is answer A, then I'm adding 1 to count answer A in my Excel files, right? So this is how I'm handling in the previous sample the 4 different buttons and deciding if I'm actually want to do something on the Excel file. I do want to do this +1. The way I'm doing the +1, I'm actually looking at the count, which the existing count right now is 8, and using a converter, I'm doing an add 1. Again, this is pretty well explained in the Help Center article, but that's the mechanism here. To answer your question, Alberto, about the blacklist of words, if we go into the freeform text, and you can see here, come on, we have the freeform text input web triggers. We have only one trigger, which is when we receive a message, which is send text. Then we add a row in our Excel file. The who is the parameter 1, and then the text is the parameter 2. We do have a converter here, which is something that we added to, that's a bit of a weird way to write things. That's a regular expression, but this is to handle line returns, line breaks, right? That's a custom script that will enable you to type in multiple lines on your question, and so it will be handled here in the Excel file. In this custom script, you could add some rules. You could decide, you could look into this input, which is coming from the message, right? Our parameter 2, this thing here is this box here. I want to show you the JavaScript code, right? But this is parameter 1, this is parameter 2. So when you get your parameter 2, and you do have here it as an input, in addition to processing some too many blank space, trimming the text, you could add some regular expressions. You can add your blacklist here, and if you do see the word, I don't know, put stars in it, or just decide I won't do nothing. I will just remove the question. I will not add to the row. This would be done more in a condition on the trigger itself. So that's one way of handling that on the experience side. Another way, in the end, that's still JavaScript, right? Another way could be at this level here, when you hit the send button, well, before even calling the web triggers API, check the text. And again, either replace the bad words with stars or whatever sign you want, or just say, okay, this is bad. I'm going to display a pop-up here. Hey, don't be rude. I won't send your message. So you have multiple levels of control, depending on actually where you want to add this control and what you want to do with this blacklist content. So Alberto, I hope that answers your question. All right, I'm gonna go back to play mode and have a look. Great, thanks Alberto. Go back to the third one. So again, these two web triggers API, you only need a credential key in this sample. Again, that's for the sample reuse to make sure that you can test it on your side. just put your web triggers credential key that you can create on your dashboard, on your Intuiface dashboard, and you're good to go. And as I did on my machine, you may have to escape and replay, but that shouldn't happen on your side. The third one is not based on the web triggers, right? We are going to use a third party, and you know I'm using it a lot. You know I like these guys. We are going to use Airtable. So before going into the why and the instructions, why did we decide to use this, right? Because in here, we did not write any HTML, any JavaScript, any CSS. Airtable is providing a tool to create a form. And the only thing you will need to use here is a URL bringing your audience. I will bring you to that form so you can enter some multiple fields and give your data entry that will be sent to the Airtable, which then will be displaying in this scene. So these instructions here, I'm going to go through all of them. You have 6 steps. They're a bit more complex than the Web Triggers API, but we try to split them into these 6 steps. They're fairly easy to follow, and you can use the free Airtable account. So the first thing you need to do is actually to copy our base. So click on the button here. This is going to be open our sample base with 4 entries. And actually, this sample here is about taskboard, right? So you're in brainstorm meeting and you want to ask people, okay, put your task and let's try to organize this, all of us. We have one presenter, you have an audience, like 10 persons meeting room, this kind of thing. So let's go through the instructions. Copy base is here. I'm gonna add this base to my own account. I will actually add this to my webinar tables, add base. So now in my account, I do have this new mobile-driven data entry base. While we can see we have a table with 4 default tasks, you could delete them. I'm going to keep them for now. And you have a second view, which is the form I was talking about. Okay, so that was step 1, just copy the base. Okay, next step. If you're new to Airtable and you have never used it before, you will need to create an API key on Airtable. So like we did the web triggers key before, we still need an API key to use their web services. So access Airtable, click the button here. On my account, I already have it, but when you arrive to your account, you can actually create a key here, right? I will not show you this one because I don't want to regenerate it. That's the one you will need at some point in the next steps. So second step on my side, done. I already had one. Next step. All right, so going back to the base, we need to copy the form share URL. That's the URL which will bring you to the form to enter the data. So I need to go into the form view, share form, and copy this thing. So going back to my table here, this is the form, share form. That's the URL I need, right? I'm copying this, going back to the experience, and then that's the link I need to enter. This will be encoded as the QR code. Next step. So that's the form. All right, so I'm able now to enable you to type in some data. What I do need is to tell this experience, okay, here is the table I just created on my account. How do I get this data? How do I list my records and display them into the experience? Again, for those of you who are familiar with Airtable, that's easy peasy, you know, but for new people who have never used API Explorer, hey, good news, you won't have to. Everything is already done in the sample. You just need to enter 2 parameters that will be used in these web services. So going to the list records in the documentation. Let's do that. We have our grid view here. That's our table. Help, API documentation. That's the web services documentation. And we won't need to write any code, right? I need to go into my table, list records. That's what we want to do. And we are actually going to need 2 things from here. One will be the base ID and one will be the API key. So you do need to show the API key here. And I will have to change it after the webinar. All right, so check the show API key. That's done. I'm ready on this page. Next step. Among these requests, you have two objects we will need. The one is the base ID to make sure that among your Airtable account, you're looking at the right base, the new one you just created. So that's the request here. The base is this app something. So I'm copying this, going back to Composer, base ID, paste. Next. And the second one is the API key, which is this one. Don't copy the bearer thing, just copy a key. That's key something. I'm ready. Good. By the way, as soon as I've done this in this sample, the three pieces of information, as well as my WebTrigger API key before, were saved in an Excel file. So if you hit escape, if your PC reboots, if you close Composer, if you reopen the same experience, you will still have your setup. So by the way, the QR code is on the left. You can scan it. And don't worry, you won't see something appearing here until I hit the refresh button. Why is that? We are not using the WebTriggers API, right? So you are not pushing a message from the web to my experience. You're pushing a message from the web to Airtable, and then I can decide how often I refresh the content from Airtable to download the content into this experience. So let's see, do we have something here? Yes, we do. Might have been me. I'm not sure who did that. I didn't use my phone, so all right. Please scan the code. I'm going to show you actually on the Airtable. Let me put this on the side so you still have access to the code. If we look into this link, this is actually what you will see on your mobile phone, right? So it's a form, and this UI is generated automatically by Airtable. If I do, that's my webinar task demo. It's me. I can choose one of the categories, and all the fields here are defined by your tables. You define how many fields, what type of fields you want. And this is definitely in progress. If I hit submit, thanks for submitting the form, right? Sounds good. If I look into the table now, I can see, all right, you did a few things. Okay, all right. So if I hit refresh now, I'm gonna get all these new inputs. This one is actually true. And I will get all these things. A nice thing, as you can see, all the tasks are appearing in the top left corner at the beginning. As soon as I move them, so let's say the buy milk one, right? That's a funny one and easy to find. If I put it right on the right hand side here, and if I go in Airtable, the buy milk is here, and you can see X and Y have been updated. So we are saving the properties to make sure that if I hit escape and if I reload the table, all the things will have a right info. The ones which are empty are the ones I did not move. So if we look at the next one, we have a sale here. That's this one from Ari. If I move this one to the second column, there you go. You have a green thing here saying this one has just been updated. You can definitely look into the sample, how this is done. It's the same mechanism as the one we were using in the task board sample, which we've had for a while in the marketplace. Basically, on these objects, when a manipulated trigger is raised, we use the X and Y and we update the data. It can be in Excel, here it's in Airtable, same philosophy. So when would you use such a thing? And it doesn't have to be Airtable, right? Could be WordPress, could be whatever, maybe Google Forms, could be whatever tool you want. The idea is to enable people to enter more than one or two fields. So writing the HTML would be maybe complex. And when you have tools to do things for you, don't try to reinvent the tools, right? Use the tools. So in here, that could be done. This actually was a request from one of our customers who wanted to do business meetings, again, with this configuration of 10, 12 people in the same meeting, maybe in the same room, maybe on a Zoom meeting, maybe a mix of those, and trying to brainstorm about, okay, how do we organize the project? How do we work together? Who's gonna do what? Here are the tasks, please assign them to yourself, and then let's see how we organize this. build on top of that, right? This is not a finished experience, obviously. As in the dashboard, you might provide the capability to, okay, this one, I'm going to click on job, it's going to open the list of my employees, and I can reassign the task. It's a door opened to this notion of collaboration using a smartphone as an entry, so you don't have 12 interface players running on every person's device. You have one brain, one presenter, which I am right now, and then you have all the audience using their smartphone, which everybody has, to give their input to this experience. If at some point you want to go back to the settings, you can just click on the settings and you can go through the different steps again. And I think I covered most of the things in this scene. I'm going to take a pause here and go back to edit mode just to show you a little bit of the scene, and then we'll see if we have other new questions about that. So in this scene, we do have here a dashboard. It's a pinboard, sorry, enabling to move all the objects in there. We have the templates for each object. We're using the X and Y from the Airtable list. Then we have all these nice backgrounds, the different names bound to the different fields coming from Airtable. So on the Airtable side, we have three web services, three interface sets. The main one here, that's the dashboard. That's the one which is retrieving the data feed. And you can see here, authorization and base ID, they are bound. And they are bound to some variable, something which make it work in the sample. This is what you entered during the instructions phase. In the pop-up which you had when you were pasting these keys, they were saved in here, and they're also saved behind the scene in this settings general Excel file, which now contains my WebTrigger API key and my Airtable API key, base ID, and share form. So that's also something which I do recommend doing, using this notion of settings, enabling to save data, save configuration, so that if you go offline, if you reboot, you still have these fields configured. On the Airtable side, this is listing the records. This one is actually not the best name, but that's the one which is used to update the X and Y. So if we look here on our template, we do have a trigger here is manipulated, the one I mentioned earlier. So when our template is manipulated, we do call this, I think it's a post or an update or patch maybe, a request, I'm not sure on this one. And we update all the fields we're using, especially to update the X and Y. And the last one is the delete. So actually, if I go back to play mode here, it's gonna load my table. And okay, I'm not gonna delete this one because that's definitely on my to-do list. I'm gonna delete this one because this is done. Delete. There you go. So I actually deleted the record from the table, and that's one of the web services you can use. If you were using an Excel file, that would be delete row. Here we are using Airtable. It's a separate web service. And if I go in here, probably was after there, the croissant, but at least I don't have any more croissant in the list, so it has been deleted. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Jeff for some questions now.
Just one more in the queue currently, which is about automating the refresh. So you mentioned right now it's manual. Is there a way to have Airtable let us know when it's time to refresh?
Yes, there is. I do believe not with a free account on Airtable. And yes, I still have a free account of Airtable. I've been using them for the last 3 or 4 years, and I still have a free account. If I'm not gonna talk too much about these guys, but long story short, if you use their automations, you could say something here, create an automation, name it, choose a trigger when a record is created in my table, that's the taskboard. So that's the trigger on the Airtable side, action. Then you have some predefined actions which you can use with the free account. But the one we would use here would be the run script. And That's on the paid account. Using this run script, this is where you would go with the web triggers API. And you could send a refresh message to using your API key and device ID on your device to make sure that you're actually telling the device, hey, refresh now. I've actually been using this with a customer of us who has a paid account, and it works brilliantly well. So there's no doubt on that. That would be the way to go. Actually, when we introduced the automations, they didn't have that many objects. I think they have somewhere in their roadmap to add an HTTP request, so you could do it directly. I'm not sure it's going to be in a free plan or if it's going to stay in the paid plan. So that would be a way here.
Yeah, well, yeah. So there was a follow-up. So you could do polling as well from Intuiface, I imagine, right, Seb? You could do that. Just every
Yes.
5 seconds, do a refresh. You
could. With so many objects here, especially for webinar, I definitely did not want to do that. Things might blink a little bit. So that wouldn't be the way I would go with the polling. And again, it really depends on the scenario. Remember, in the multiple choice poll, where you are asking a question, you provide 4 answers. I didn't show the answers at first because I don't want to bias the other inputs. So that's a way to say, if I ask a question and somebody answers first, then all the other ones are going to say, oh, I don't need to answer. It's been done. Good. If you don't display the answers and you let the presenter, the master of ceremony, handle that and say, okay, have you all been doing your homework? Are you good? Did you submit your inputs? Okay, let's reveal these inputs at once and see how it's going on. If you want something real time, then you might want to go with the scripting and using the web triggers API from Airtable to call the refresh on Airtable. So showing this in Composer. I'm not going to show it on the Airtable side, right? But now on the Intuiface side, if you are calling these web triggers, what we would do would be adding a web triggers. I would call this my Airtable web trigger just to avoid confusion. On this one, I would add a trigger. If I receive a message that says refresh, that would be the message I would call from the script on the Airtable side. Then on the action, I can say on my Airtable data feeds, which is this one, dashboard, refresh. Done. That's the kind of things you could do, right?
But you're right, in general, refreshing without intent can be risky because some part of the screen is going to either blink or steal control from the user. You have to be very careful about automating a refresh. Even here, you were stacking the tasks, Seb.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't know that there was a refresh, you may not realize there's more tasks to be parceled out. You know what I mean? The way it's currently constructed anyway.
Correct.
So any kind of automatic refresh is risky and thus requires a UI, I think, that can handle that in a friendly way. If I'm at a kiosk and I'm doing something and the whole screen refreshes, right? Well, that's not good. Here, that's not the whole screen that's refreshing. It's just the little upper left-hand corner. So the design is more friendly to an automatic refresh, but still, he's not automatically refreshing. So he knows when I hit the button, I should be looking for new tasks. So you just have to be careful about it, that's all.
Yeah, and again, there are so many ways of doing that, again, as a sample, keep it simple. That's what we try to do. And to make it work and reusable by you as a basis, right? As a base to work upon and to build your own use case, your own scenario, depending on your needs. What Jeff said actually gave me an idea. Maybe instead of having one single web service that loads all the tasks directly here in the dashboard and which only refreshes manually on this button, you could have a second web service that would just be looking at these records, trying to count them based on the formula in Airtable and displaying, as I did in the poll, okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 new tasks where the X and Y are not defined, for example. So you can find how many new tasks you have, and you would see this number going up.
A little
And that would
counter.
be, yeah, a little counter, and that would be a visual aid for the presenter to say, okay, now I'm going to hit refresh. I'm going to download these new tasks and display them because I have enough to decide that. Or you could automate that when this number is more than 5, then do this. So many ways, we cannot show them all.
By the way, you could have built this without Airtable. I mean, you could have taken an approach more similar to the first 2 use cases. This is just showing another way to do it.
Definitely, we could have done that with regular HTML, JavaScript, CSS for the mobile phone, the Web Triggers API. So we would have some like push messages, and then use an Excel file behind the scene to store these name, category, who, and status. We could, but we also wanted to show that if you have a tool, and Airtable is just one of them, could be NAC, could be Directors, could be WordPress, could be whatever. And you don't want to write this code, you don't want to write this HTML, JavaScript because there are tools that are doing it for you, you can. That's just one example here.
Those seem to be all the questions. I know that you visited on more than one occasion the idea that the web page is something that you're not creating with Intuiface. It's been created by you, the agency, the integrator, whoever.
That's correct. One of the last things I wanted to cover actually is about this usage of the Web Triggers API. I would definitely recommend you to go into our Connecting to the World course and to go into the Web Triggers lesson. This video will show you all the tips and tricks, all the ways you can use this Web Trigger API. On the Intuiface side, again, I'm not giving any recommendation on the way to write JavaScript, and please don't ask me to do that. But that's one very helpful lesson that will be helpful for the persons writing the HTML and JavaScript code, or for the ones who want to reuse the ones we provide in the Help Center article, again, as a basis to work upon. So Academy, Connecting to the World, all these courses, and not only the web triggers, right, but all these courses about working with data. API Explorer is definitely the one we use with Airtable. Excel, obviously useful, data templates. Everything is connected here, right? That's Connect to the World. And yes, you will have to listen to my French accent in all these videos. I'm sorry for that, or not.
Homage. So I don't see any other questions. Remember, this is a reference design. It is intended to illustrate an approach to addressing a particular need, a particular scenario. The intent is for it to be changed. Now, feel free to repurpose as much as you can, of course, but the idea is more to inspire additional uses and to just rip this thing apart and use it as a first step, right, Seb?
Yes. One last thing, which actually is covered in the Help Center article. How do you reuse this? I mean, not the sample to play and to experiment and to test, but if you want to use one of these 3 scenarios in your own example, in your own experience, the best way to do this is to select the one you want. Let's go with the freeform. Right-click, copy, and copy the entire scene. Open a second composer and paste the scene. Because yes, I know not a lot of people know that, but you can open 2 composers side by side and copy a scene between one composer to another one. What it will do is, yes, it will copy this design and you're invited to change the design and make it your own and adapt it to your own needs, but it will also copy the interface assets which are used in this scene and only in this scene. So for example, here we have 3 web triggers. Only the free text input is used in this scene. This one will be copied to your experience. The triggers will remain. And because this web trigger is doing something on this text Excel file, this Excel file will be copied as well in your experience. So you don't have to guess in here which ones are used. Just copy the scene, paste it on your side. That's one thing. And actually, it wasn't the last thing I wanted to do, because what would be an Intuiface webinar if I was not talking about analytics? I'm going to show you quickly, because I think we have a few more minutes. If we look at the multiple choice poll and these 4 conditional triggers, you can see we are logging an event. So we know when somebody is answering, is providing a vote or providing an answer, name it the way you want. And with an answer, the answer being, what's the answer here? The answer A was Jupiter. So we have been logging this before, right? And if we go into your account and into your analytics dashboard, yes, login. If yeah, that's a demo account I don't use a lot. So let's see what we have. If I create a new chart, and I'm just going to look at the data I have from today. If I look at the kind of events, question received, that's the free form text, vote received. So just doing this, measure the events, I got 31 responses. And I guess I should have something like answer. If I put this in a dimension and put some colors, Jupiter, and let's put the values. There you go, 10, 4, 6, and 11. These were my multiple choice poll answers for today. That's how long it takes to create the charts to display the results of your poll. And obviously you can do the same with the freeform text. That's the last thing I wanted to say about the analytics. You log, you define what you want to log here, you go on your dashboard, you create the chart, you display it. And this time that's it. I went through all the notes I had. I went through all the scenes. Well, we obviously are going to stay a bit connected a bit more. If you have some questions, feel free to drop them in the question box. We're monitoring them with Jeff. Else, if you need to go in another meeting, thanks for being here with us today. I hope this gave you some ideas, gave you some scenarios, and opened some doors about what can be done in Intuiface, especially in these times. We are not in 2020 anymore, but we can only expect 2021 to be better at some point. But we know we are going to use Zoom meetings, WebEx, Teams, even a bit still in 2021 more than ever before. So these kind of tools, using the smartphones that everybody has at home to enable people to communicate together and to interact together using Intuiface, we really wanted to share that mechanism with you because we are using it ourselves. So let's see how you can use them. And please let us know. You know about the community, community.intuiface.com. We have the show and tell. If you build something using this mechanism, please let us know. We'd love to hear your ideas, your scenarios. Jeff, on the questions, I'm trying to catch up, but I think you did a great job.
Just you've got some thank yous as well, but Frank was wondering, when you copy a scene, does that include any experience layers visible on that scene?
That's a good question.
Probably not, but I don't know.
I'd say not, and that's a good point for these two ones. I have to say I didn't try. So in this case, maybe if you know you want the free form instead of the MCP, the multiple choice poll, in the layers here, you might want to you see the web triggers credential. That's an experience layer. You might want to move it in the scene before doing your copy. Probably. That's how we'll try it. Again, if you are following an instruction that we gave in the Help Center article or in the scene, and you have an issue because we forgot something, because something works on our machine and doesn't work on another machine, because hey, that happens. I hope you all know how to contact our support team, support@intuiface.com or support.intuiface.com, and then create a ticket. We'll be happy to help you on these things and to make it work. And that would be an opportunity to discuss your use case also and know exactly what you want to do with such features. So please don't be shy. Don't hesitate to ask us.
We will follow up today's webinar with an email pointing to the recording. A particular thank you to those who showed up today. We like you better than those who did not. It's between us. Seb, thank you very much for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everybody. And have a great day. Take care.
Take care, everyone.